Love makes you blind. It makes you believe in things that aren't real, makes you trust people who don't deserve it, makes you build a life on foundations that were never solid to begin with. And for years I had been blind. Daniel and I had what I thought was the perfect marriage. We had been together for 6 years, married for 4, and in that time, I had convinced myself that we were unshakable. We had built a beautiful home together. A cozy townhouse with white shutters and a garden I spent hours tending to on weekends. We had late-night talks under soft blankets, whispered dreams about the future, inside jokes no one else would understand. I loved him. God, I loved him. And I never thought I had a reason to doubt that he loved me too. Vanessa, my sister, had always been my closest friend. We grew up together, inseparable. She was the wild one, the adventurous one, while I had always been the responsible older sister, the one who cleaned up her messes, the one who protected her when she needed it. I never thought I would be the one who needed protecting from her. It started as a feeling. A whisper in the back of my mind that I ignored for far too long. The way Daniel's attention started slipping away, the way he was always distracted. The way he stopped asking about my day, stopped looking at me the way he used to. And then there were the business trips. At first I had accepted them without question. Daniel was ambitious, always chasing the next big deal, always working late to build a future for us. But the late nights started turning into weekends. The weekends started turning into full weeks. And when he came back, he smelled different. Like expensive hotel shampoo, like perfume that wasn't mine. I told myself I was overthinking. That he was just busy. That I was imagining things. Because the alternative, the thought that my husband could be cheating, was too painful to accept. And then one afternoon the truth hit me like a freight train. I had been out running errands when I decided to stop by Daniel's office. I wasn't planning to stay long, just a quick surprise visit, bringing him his favorite coffee like I had done 100 times before. It was normal, it was innocent. Until I walked in and my world shattered. Daniel was standing in his office, his hands tangled in her hair. Vanessa, my sister. I froze, my body suddenly too heavy to move, my breath trapped in my throat. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers, crashing onto the floor, the sound echoing in the silent room. Daniel turned first, his expression shifting from affection to panic in an instant. Vanessa stepped back, her eyes wide, guilt flashing across her face. But not enough guilt. I felt like the air had been sucked from my lungs. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. This was my husband. My sister. The two people I trusted most in the world. Emma, Daniel started, his voice strained, like he was already trying to come up with a lie that would make this okay. Vanessa swallowed hard. It's not what it looks like. I let out a sharp, hollow laugh. Really? Because it looks exactly like what it is. She flinched. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting around like he was searching for an escape. We need to talk about this, he said. I blinked. But what was there to talk about? You don't get to smooth this over, Daniel. My voice was quieter than I expected it to be, but steadier than I felt. You don't get to explain this away. His jaw clenched. It just happened. I let out another laugh, but this one tasted bitter. It just happened. I repeated, shaking my head. How long? They didn't answer. I took a slow step forward, my hands curling into fists. How long? Vanessa looked away first. And that was my answer. Months. Maybe even years. I had been the fool. I felt something inside me crack, something deep and unfixable. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was an erasure of everything I had believed in. Every moment, every memory, every I love you. It had all been a lie. And yet, standing there in that office, I refused to let them see me break. I turned on my heel and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. Because they didn't deserve my pain. But as I stepped onto the street, my vision blurring, my breath coming in shallow, I made myself a promise. They thought they had won. They thought I would be the victim, the broken woman left behind, the sister who would quietly fade into the background while they continued their disgusting affair. But they were wrong. Because I wasn't just going to move on. I was going to destroy them. And they would never see it coming. Betrayal doesn't just hurt. It redefines you. It takes the person you thought you were and tears them apart, forcing you to become something else entirely. I had spent my whole life believing in love, in loyalty, in the unshakable bond of family. And in one brutal moment I lost everything. 4 days after discovering the affair, I felt like I was floating through my own life, detached from reality. I went through the motions, brushing my teeth, getting dressed, eating meals I couldn't taste. But inside I was hollow. People noticed. My coworkers asked if I was okay. My friends sent worried texts. Even my mother called, her voice lined with concern, asking if something had happened between Vanessa and me. I wanted to scream the truth. I wanted to tell everyone exactly what kind of people they were. But I didn't. Because something inside me had shifted. The pain, the devastation, the rage. It didn't break me. Transformed me. Vanessa and Daniel had expected me to crumble. To cry, to beg, to disappear quietly so they could live happily ever after, unbothered by the mess they had left behind. But they had underestimated me. I wasn't going to disappear. I was going to make them regret ever thinking they could do this to me. The first thing I did was cut Daniel off completely. No screaming matches, no desperate attempts to understand why he had done what he did. He didn't deserve closure. I stopped answering his texts, ignored his calls, and when he showed up at my apartment knocking on the door like he still had a right to be in my life, I let him stand there. I watched through the peephole as he sighed, running a frustrated hand through his hair. "Emma, please. We need to talk about this." No, we didn't. He stood there for another 5 minutes before finally leaving. And as I watched him walk away, something inside me settled. I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. But not the kind of anger that burned out quickly, the kind that made you act recklessly. No. This was the kind of anger that waited. That planned. That turned into something far more dangerous than just revenge. I started observing them. I never spoke to Vanessa directly, but I watched from a distance. She was careful. More careful than Daniel, at least. She never texted me, never called, never tried to explain herself. But I saw her posting carefully curated pictures on social media. Images that seemed innocent on the surface but were laced with meaning. A new ring on her finger, just subtle enough to be noticed. A photo at a restaurant that I had once called my favorite, with a caption about new beginnings. A cryptic post about how some things are meant to be, no matter how hard people fight against them. She wasn't just moving on. She was enjoying this. She thought she had won. And that's when I knew I couldn't just move on. I had to make them pay. I spent weeks planning. Every night I sat in my apartment going through old messages, old photos, remembering every single detail of my relationship with Daniel. I found financial records, text exchanges, evidence of just how much I had given him over the years. I had supported him financially when he was struggling, had helped him build his business, had sacrificed so much for him. And now he was about to marry her? Oh no. That wasn't going to happen. Not without consequences. Then came the real turning point. A month after the affair was exposed, Vanessa invited me to dinner. At first, I nearly laughed at the sheer audacity of it. She had stolen my husband, humiliated me, and now she wanted to sit across from me and pretend to be my sister again? But then I realized something. She was nervous. The message wasn't casual. "Hey, I think we should talk. Just us. I miss you, Em." I stared at the text for a long time, then smiled to myself. She wanted to rebuild something with me. Not because she felt guilty. No, Vanessa never felt guilty about anything. But because she was scared. She knew I wasn't reacting the way she had expected. She had been waiting for the explosion, for the public meltdown, for the dramatic confrontation. And when it never came, she started to wonder. What was I doing instead? I agreed to meet her. Not because I wanted to forgive her. But because I wanted to watch her squirm. We met at a quiet restaurant, the kind of place where people spoke in hushed tones, where no one paid attention to the woman sitting across from me, fidgeting with her napkin. Vanessa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I feel like we should talk. I tilted my head. About what, exactly? She hesitated. I know this is hard for you, but... I cut her off with a soft laugh. Hard? Vanessa, you stole my husband. You think hard is the word for this. He swallowed. I didn't plan for this to happen. Daniel and I held up a hand. Stop. I don't care. She blinked. That's the part you don't understand, I continued, my voice calm, steady. I don't care about your excuses. I don't care how it happened. Because in the end it doesn't matter. She exhaled, looking down. I don't want to lose you, Em. I smiled then. Actually smiled. That's funny, I said, leaning forward. Because you already did. I stood up, tossing a few bills onto the table, and walked away without another word. I knew she would sit there, staring after me, wondering why I wasn't more angry, why I wasn't throwing a scene, why I wasn't acting like the bitter ex-wife. She didn't know that I was waiting. That I was letting her feel just comfortable enough before I made my move. Because I wasn't just going to let them have their happy ending. I was going to burn it to the ground. Vanessa and Daniel thought they had won. They thought I had accepted my fate, that I had swallowed my pride and moved on. To them, I was just the bitter ex-wife, the abandoned sister. Someone to be pitied but not feared. They couldn't have been more wrong. While they flaunted their relationship, while Vanessa paraded around with my husband, I was planning. I wasn't interested in petty revenge. I didn't want to throw drinks in their faces or key Daniel's car. No, I wanted something bigger. Something permanent. I wanted to ruin them in a way they would never recover from. And for that, I needed information. I started digging. First, I went through every document Daniel and I had shared. I looked at financial statements, legal records, everything that was in both our names. I had spent years supporting him, believing in him, investing in his dreams while putting mine on hold. And now that he had what he wanted, he thought he could erase me? Not a chance. I found what I needed quickly. The house. My name was still on it. He had never bothered to change it after moving in with Vanessa, assuming I would be too heartbroken to care. The business. I had been the one to fund it in the early years, which meant I had proof that his success had been built on my money. I even found old emails, messages I had long forgotten about, where he promised to pay me back once he made it big. Legally, he owed me everything. And he didn't even know it yet. But I didn't stop there. I needed proof of the affair, something undeniable. Something that, when revealed, would leave no room for them to spin their lies. I had the video from his office, the one where I caught them in the act, but I needed more. So I started tracking them. It wasn't hard. Vanessa was reckless, always posting little hints on social media, always trying to make sure people knew she had taken my place. She tagged him in photos from expensive restaurants, from weekend getaways, from the home I used to live in. She was careless. And I used that to my advantage. I hired a private investigator. Someone discreet, someone good. And within 2 weeks I had everything I needed. Photos. Videos. Transactions. Proof that Daniel had started spending money from our joint accounts on Vanessa, even after I had confronted him. Proof that he had bought her jewelry, a car, even tried to take out a mortgage in my name for a second house. He was not just a cheater. He was a fraud. And I was about to expose him to the world. But I wasn't ready yet. Not until they made the biggest mistake of all. One evening, I got a text from Vanessa. "We're getting married. I hope you can be happy for us. Let's talk soon." I stared at my phone, my pulse steady, my hands not even shaking. She wanted me to be happy for them. She wanted to talk. I almost laughed. She had no idea that she had just given me exactly what I needed. Because their wedding wasn't just an event. It was an opportunity. They had taken everything from me. Now I was going to take everything from them. And it was going to be glorious. The moment I read Vanessa's text, something inside me clicked into place. I had spent weeks, maybe even months, gathering every piece of evidence I needed. I had let them flaunt their affair, let them think they had broken me, let them believe I was just the discarded ex-wife and sister they could walk all over. But now it was my turn. Their wedding wasn't just a celebration of their so-called love. It was a stage. A public event where all their friends, family, and business associates would be gathered in one place. It was a moment they wanted to be perfect. A day where everyone would look at them and believe they had won. And I was going to destroy it. I started with the guest list. Vanessa, ever the narcissist, had invited everyone we knew. Mutual friends, extended family, even people from Daniel's company. She wasn't just marrying him, she was making a statement. She wanted the world to see that she had taken my life, my husband, my future, and made it hers. I smiled to myself as I scanned the invitation. Perfect. Because the more people who were there, the more witnesses I would have when everything fell apart. I began my real work. First, I reached out to the right people. The ones who already suspected something was off about Vanessa and Daniel's relationship. The ones who had been whispering behind their backs but didn't have the proof to confirm their suspicions. I didn't give them everything, not yet, but I planted the seeds. Did you know Daniel and Vanessa were involved while I was still married to him? I wonder how Daniel's company investors would feel if they knew he used business funds to pay for his new fiancé's lifestyle. It's funny, Vanessa was always so interested in my marriage. Guess I should have seen it coming. Word spread faster than I expected. Within days I was getting messages from people who had once been our friends, People who had sided with Daniel after the divorce, suddenly curious about my side of the story. But I wasn't done yet. I had more than just whispers. I had proof. I compiled everything. The private investigators' reports, the financial documents, the photos, the love letters Daniel had written Vanessa while still married to me. I put it all together in a beautiful little presentation. And then I made sure it would be seen. I didn't just send it to select people. I sent it to everyone. Their wedding planner. Their venue coordinator. The company investors who had put their trust in Daniel's business. The press. Our family. I didn't give them time to react. I simply pressed send and let the truth spread like wildfire. The fallout started before the wedding day even arrived. Vanessa tried to do damage control, calling family members, claiming I was jealous and trying to ruin her happiness. But the evidence spoke for itself. I had dates, receipts, bank statements. There was no spinning this. Daniel was hit even harder. His company investors, many of whom were invited to the wedding, started asking questions. Questions about the missing funds, about the inappropriate use of corporate money, about whether he was stable enough to be running a business when he was clearly so reckless in his personal life. Their wedding, once a glamorous event meant to show off their new love, was starting to look like a disaster. And then came the final touch. I saved the best part for the actual wedding day, because I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to make sure everyone saw it happen in real time. Their big day was about to become the biggest scandal of the year. And I couldn't wait to watch it unfold. If Vanessa and Daniel were expecting me to lash out, they were wrong. If they thought I would storm into their wedding venue screaming and throwing drinks, they underestimated me. I didn't want a quick scene. I wanted a public downfall. So I played my role perfectly. I sent Vanessa a message the week before the wedding. I know things have been messy, but I just want you to be happy. Let's put the past behind us. I'd love to be at your wedding. It was a lie, of course. But she didn't know that. Within minutes she responded. I'm so glad to hear that. Of course I want you there. You're my sister. Sister. The word tasted like poison on my tongue. So I pretended. I even helped with the final wedding arrangements, offering suggestions on the decor, the guest seating, the audio setup. Vanessa lapped it up, eager to believe that I had accepted my fate, that I was willing to watch her steal the life I had built. I even let her hug me. I let her tell me how grateful she was that I was being so mature about everything. And all the while I smiled, because I knew what was coming. I had planted every seed. I had sent every piece of evidence to the right people. The investors, the family members, the business partners. Everyone would be watching closely on their big day. And then I made sure the venue staff knew me. I made friendly conversation with the wedding coordinators, the sound technicians, the event photographers. I learned their names, made myself seem helpful. I even casually mentioned that I wanted to surprise the bride and groom with a special slideshow, a tribute to their love. The wedding planner loved the idea. She had no idea what was really coming. By the night before the wedding, everything was in place. Vanessa had no idea. Daniel had no idea. They thought I was supporting them. But in less than 24 hours I was going to ruin them both. And they wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. I wasn't doing this alone. 4 months I had been quietly collecting allies. People who knew the truth, people who had seen the cracks in Daniel and Vanessa's perfect little facade. At first they had stayed silent, unwilling to pick sides. But once I started leaking information, once people saw the proof, everything changed. One by one they came to me. A former colleague of Daniel's, who had always found it suspicious that he suddenly had so much money before our divorce was even finalized. An old friend of Vanessa's, who admitted she had always suspected she was the kind of woman who would do this to her own sister. A business associate of Daniel's who had heard rumors of his financial mismanagement but had never had the proof, until I handed it to him. These people weren't just witnesses. They were ammunition. And I was going to use them. The final days before the wedding were filled with carefully orchestrated moves. I made sure to have personal conversations with key guests. People who would be there, who would be watching, who would be talking once everything unfolded. I didn't tell them exactly what was coming. I just let them wonder. I just hope Vanessa really knows what she's getting into with Daniel. It's funny, he never treated me like this when we were married. I heard some pretty crazy things about how they started their relationship. But I guess it's not my place to say anything. By the time the wedding day arrived, the air was already thick with suspicion. People were whispering. Some were waiting for something to happen. But no one, not even Vanessa or Daniel, had any idea just how bad it was going to be. I had prepared everything. The venue had a large screen at the front of the reception hall, where they planned to play a slideshow of their love story. What they didn't know was that the real slideshow had been prepared by me. And once it started playing, there would be no stopping it. Their wedding was going to be remembered. But not for the reason they wanted. The morning of the wedding was bright and beautiful, the kind of perfect day that people dream about for their vows. Vanessa had spared no expense. The venue was breathtaking, decorated with white roses and gold accents, the kind of elegance she had always envied from the weddings she saw on social media. It was her day, and I was about to turn it into her worst nightmare. I arrived at the venue early, dressed in a sleek, elegant gown that screamed confidence rather than heartbreak. People who had once pitied me looked at me with curiosity, whispering to each other as I walked past. She looks so calm. I can't believe she's actually here. Do you think she's really okay with this? I smiled at them but didn't say a word. Let them wonder. Vanessa was in the bridal suite when I arrived, surrounded by bridesmaids fussing over her, perfecting every last detail of her hair and makeup. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with relief. "Emma," she gushed, reaching for my hands. "I can't tell you how much it means to me that you're here." I squeezed her hands gently, my face a mask of warmth. "Of course, Vanessa. I wouldn't miss this for the world." She had no idea. As the guests filled the ceremony space, I made my way toward the back of the venue, where the tech team was preparing the evening's slideshow, the romantic, carefully curated tribute to their love story. I had made sure that I was the one who sent them the final file. The moment the ceremony ended and the guests moved inside for the reception, my trap would be set. Daniel was beaming when he saw me, his smile just a little too tight. He thought he had won. He thought I had come to make peace, to accept that he had chosen my sister over me. I played along, congratulating them, letting Vanessa kiss my cheek, letting Daniel shake my hand like we were old friends instead of former lovers. And then, as the dinner wrapped up and the music softened, the moment arrived. The venue coordinator took the microphone, smiling warmly at the newlyweds. "And now, to celebrate the love between Vanessa and Daniel, we have a special video presentation, created with memories from their journey together." The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life. And then the real show began. The first few images were innocent. Childhood photos of Vanessa, baby pictures of Daniel. The audience awed at the sweet nostalgia. Then came the engagement photos. The posed smiles, the golden ring on Vanessa's finger, the picture-perfect lie. And then the images changed. Screenshots of text messages between Daniel and Vanessa, while he was still married to me. Plans of secret meetings, confessions of love behind my back, whispers of how they were waiting for the right time to tell me the truth. Then came the videos. Security footage from Daniel's office, the same one where I had caught them together. The way he kissed her, the way she wrapped her arms around him as if I didn't exist. The sound of gasps filled the room. People started murmuring. The screen flickered again, and now there were financial records. Proof that Daniel had been funneling our shared money into expensive gifts for Vanessa long before our marriage had even ended. And then came the last image. A close-up photo of Vanessa's engagement ring, next to a receipt dated 6 months before our divorce. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. And then chaos. People turned to each other, whispering in shock. Some guests stood, their expressions filled with disgust. I could see my parents frozen in horror, my mother covering her mouth with trembling hands. Vanessa let out a strangled sound, her face drained of color. "Turn it off," she shrieked, scrambling toward the tech booth. But it was too late. The damage was done. Daniel lunged for me, his face twisted in panic. "You psycho, you set this up." I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "What?" "I just thought the guests deserved to know the real love story." Vanessa's voice was shaking, near hysteria. "Emma, please, we can fix this." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Fix this?" I repeated, stepping closer to her. "You broke me, Vanessa. You took my husband, my life, my trust. And you thought I would just sit there and let you walk away with it?" She stared at me, her lip quivering. I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You stole my husband," I whispered. "So I stole your wedding." And then, before either of them could react, I turned and walked away. Behind me, the room erupted into chaos. The whispers turned into shouts. Daniel's business associates demanded answers. Family members looked at Vanessa with disgust. The wedding guests, the same people who had believed in their perfect love, were now filming, snapping pictures, spreading the scandal across every social media platform in real time. Vanessa sobbed. Daniel cursed. But me? I walked out of that venue with my head held high. Because for the first time in a long time I had won. And they would never recover from it. As I stepped out of the venue, the echoes of their disaster still rang behind me. Vanessa's shrieks, Daniel's frantic attempts to salvage his dignity, the guests whispering in scandalized shock. It was beautiful. I had spent months waiting for this moment, for the day they would reap exactly what they had sown. And now, their perfect wedding, the one they had planned as a grand showcase of their love, was nothing more than an unmitigated disaster. I didn't need to turn back to know what was happening inside. I could already imagine it. Vanessa breaking down in the middle of the ballroom, her mascara streaking down her face, her pristine white dress now a symbol of mockery rather than purity. Daniel, red-faced with rage, watching as his business associates, friends and family, all of whom had believed in his success, looked at him with newfound disgust. But as much as I had orchestrated this moment, I knew that some things didn't even need my help. Scandals like this had a way of spreading. And I had ensured it would spread fast. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already vibrating non-stop with notifications. Messages, missed calls, social media tags. It was happening. The first video had been uploaded before I had even left the venue. You guys won't believe what just happened at this wedding. It was already going viral. Every guest who had witnessed the spectacle firsthand had their phones out, recording every agonizing second of Vanessa and Daniel's downfall. Clips of the slideshow, the screenshots of their affair, the incriminating messages, they were all being shared, dissected, and analyzed by people who loved a juicy scandal. The internet thrives on drama. And I had just handed them the best story of the year. I drove away, allowing the destruction to unfold in my rearview mirror. I didn't need to stick around to see how it would end. I already knew. By the time I got home, the headlines had started rolling in. Bride's wedding exposed as a sham. You won't believe what her sister did. Businessman caught in infidelity scandal at his own wedding. Career on the line? The most brutal wedding disaster caught on camera. Watch the shocking video here. I clicked on one, sipping my wine as I watched the footage from a guest's perspective. The moment the slideshow switched from happy couple photos to evidence of their affair, the collective gasp, the silence that followed, the way Vanessa turned ghostly pale. It was perfection. And then, just as I was about to close the article, I saw something even better. A comment thread had started beneath the video. Wait, wasn't this guy supposed to be getting a major investor deal next week? YUP, and his company is already issuing a statement distancing themselves from him. Elmo, his entire career is about to go down with this wedding. I smirked. Because that was the real cherry on top. Daniel had built his empire on a foundation of lies, on the illusion of being a trustworthy businessman, a family man, a respectable figure in his industry. But now, his investors were pulling out. His business partners were watching. The people who had once admired him were now whispering about how pathetic he looked, scrambling to control the damage. And Vanessa? She had just become the most hated woman on the internet. Hundreds of comments flooded her social media. So you stole your sister's husband? Yikes. Imagine ruining your own wedding this badly. Karma hit fast on this one. She had wanted the perfect wedding. Instead, she got the worst night of her life. I put my phone down, staring out my window with a quiet sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. And now I could finally move on, knowing that they would never be able to escape the mess they had made. I expected Daniel to fight back. I knew his ego wouldn't allow him to sit quietly while his entire world collapsed around him. And predictably, within 24 hours of the wedding disaster, he started scrambling to control the damage. I watched from the comfort of my couch, sipping a glass of wine as his PR team desperately tried to salvage what was left of his reputation. News articles started shifting from mockery to official statements. Daniel Carter denies allegations of financial misconduct and claims his divorce was amicable. Newlyweds Daniel and Vanessa speak out. We are victims of a jealous ex-wife's obsession. Wedding scandal goes viral. But is the story one-sided? I laughed at that last one. They were really trying to spin the narrative, to make me look like the crazy, bitter ex who had crashed their perfect love story. It might have worked, if I hadn't anticipated this exact move. I knew Daniel well enough to predict how he would react. He wasn't the kind of man to admit defeat. No, he would try to twist the story in his favor. He would try to play the victim. But I had already planned for that. The moment I saw the first official statement from Daniel and Vanessa, I made my next move. I leaked more. I sent anonymous tips to the same media outlets that had covered the wedding scandal. This time I didn't just give them the evidence of their affair. I gave them the financial records. The proof that Daniel had used company funds for personal expenses. The evidence that he had mismanaged investments, embezzled money under the guise of business expenses, and spent thousands on Vanessa while still legally married to me. It was no longer just a cheating scandal. Now it was a legal nightmare. The moment those reports went public, everything shifted. Daniel's business partners started pulling away, fast. His company issued a statement distancing themselves from him, emphasizing that they had no knowledge of his personal financial activities. Investors started withdrawing their support. And then the real blow came. The SEC launched an official investigation. Now it wasn't just gossip. It wasn't just internet drama. Daniel was officially under scrutiny for financial fraud. And just like that, his empire started crumbling. The man who had once stood so confidently beside my sister, who had paraded her around like a trophy, was now being dragged through the mud. Vanessa, of course, panicked. Her dream life was disintegrating before her eyes. She had thought she was marrying a wealthy, successful businessman who would take care of her. Now she was married to a man on the verge of bankruptcy and legal trouble. I watched as her social media posts changed overnight. The smug, self-satisfied captions disappeared. The glamorous photos of her and Daniel mysteriously vanished from her profile. Then she did exactly what I knew she would do. She turned on him. Reports started surfacing that Vanessa was considering an annulment. That she was shocked by Daniel's financial troubles. That she had no idea about the fraudulent activity. She played the innocent wife perfectly, throwing him under the bus to save herself. Daniel was furious. I knew because he called me. For the first time in months, he actually called me. I stared at my phone as his name flashed on the screen. I let it ring. Then I picked up just to listen. Emma, he started, his voice tight, strained, on the edge of desperation. I know you did this. I smiled to myself. Did what? Don't play dumb. You set me up. I laughed softly. No, Daniel. You set yourself up. I just let the truth come out. You've ruined my life, he hissed. I leaned back, twirling my wine glass between my fingers. Funny. That's exactly what you and Vanessa tried to do to me. Silence. Then he sighed, the anger giving way to something else. Defeat. I need your help, he said, his voice quieter now. I can fix this, but I need some time. Can you at least tell people that the financial stuff is a misunderstanding? I almost choked on my wine. You want me to save you? Emma, please, he said, his voice almost pleading. I know things got messy, but, you know me. You know I wouldn't. I knew you, I corrected him coldly. And then you cheated on me with my sister. That was a mistake, he rushed out. A mistake? Oh, Daniel. Forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. Leaving the stove on is a mistake. You chose to betray me. Over and over again. He inhaled sharply. I can't lose everything, Emma. I let a slow smile spread across my lips. Then you should have thought about that before you lost me. And with that I hung up. Daniel was done. His business was ruined. His marriage was crumbling. His reputation was dead. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. I just let him destroy himself. I put my phone down, exhaling slowly. For the first time in years I felt truly free. For the first time in a long time I woke up without a knot in my stomach. There were no more anxious mornings, no more restless nights wondering why I wasn't enough, no more wasting energy on people who had proven they never deserved me in the first place. Daniel and Vanessa had destroyed their own lives. Now I was free to rebuild mine. I started small. I changed my number, blocking Daniel's desperate attempts to contact me. I wiped every trace of them from my social media, not in anger but in finality. They no longer existed in my world. And then I started doing things for me. For so long, my life had revolved around making someone else happy. First Daniel, then the twisted need to make him and Vanessa pay. But now that the revenge was complete, I had to ask myself, what do I want? Turned out I wanted a lot of things. I traveled. I booked a solo trip to a beautiful coastal town, where I spent my days walking along the beach, sipping coffee at quaint cafes, and journaling in a way I hadn't done in years. I didn't just want to escape. I wanted to rediscover who I was before Daniel had made me forget. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had distanced themselves during my marriage, not because they didn't care, but because Daniel had subtly isolated me from them. They welcomed me back with open arms, and I laughed harder than I had in years, realizing how much joy I had missed out on. I dove back into my career, pouring my energy into my work in a way I hadn't since the early days of my marriage. Without the weight of Daniel's expectations dragging me down, I thrived. I landed new projects, built connections, even got invited to industry events that I had once attended as his plus one. But now I was there as my own person. And through it all I healed. It wasn't immediate. There were still nights when I thought about how deeply they had betrayed me, still moments when the past threatened to creep in. But I reminded myself that I wasn't that woman anymore. The woman who had been lied to, used, discarded. Had taken my power back. And then, just when I had stopped looking for love, life surprised me. I met Ryan at an art gallery of all places. He wasn't flashy, wasn't the kind of man who needed to be the center of attention like Daniel. He was quiet confidence, warm eyes, a steady presence in a world that had once felt so unstable to me. We started as friends, talking about the paintings, about life, about everything and nothing at the same time. There were no grand gestures, no whirlwind romance. Just something simple, real, built on trust instead of deceit. One evening, as we walked along the waterfront, he turned to me, his expression thoughtful. "You don't talk about your past much." I hesitated, then shrugged. "Because it doesn't define me anymore." A slow smile spread across his face. "I like that." So did I. For the first time, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward. And that was the greatest victory of all. I had always thought love was something you had to fight for. That it was built through sacrifice, through compromise, through putting the other person's needs ahead of your own. That's what I had done with Daniel. Given him everything, supported his dreams, stood by him even when he started slipping away. And what had I gotten in return? Betrayal. I wasn't looking for love after that. I wasn't interested in trusting another man, in opening my heart only to have it crushed again. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Ryan had been a stranger at first. A quiet presence in my new world, someone I had met at an art gallery and then somehow kept running into, at a coffee shop, at a bookstore, at the same charity event I had attended for work. At first, I brushed it off as coincidence, but eventually I realized something. I liked being around him. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a whirlwind. It was easy. He listened when I spoke. He asked about my day and actually cared about the answer. When I told him about my dreams, my real dreams, the ones I had buried under years of being Daniel's wife, he didn't belittle them or tell me they weren't practical. He just smiled and said, "You should go for it." And the strangest part? I started to believe him. One night, after weeks of late-night walks and coffee shop conversations, he finally asked the question I had been waiting for. What happened? He didn't phrase it as, "Why are you single?" or "What's your baggage?" He just asked it like he wanted to understand. I hesitated. Not because I was afraid of telling him, but because for the first time I realized I wasn't angry anymore. So I told him. I told him about Daniel, about Vanessa, about the betrayal that had once shattered me. I told him about the wedding, about how I had taken my revenge, about how I had walked away with my head held high. When I finished, I expected him to react like most people did, with shock, maybe a little judgment, maybe a laugh at the drama of it all. But all he did was nod, his expression calm. "I'm glad you got your closure," he said simply. I blinked. "That's it." He smiled. "What else is there to say? You did what you had to do." I exhaled, something inside me unclenching. I had expected judgment, but all I got was acceptance. And that's when I knew. Love wasn't supposed to feel like a battle. It wasn't supposed to feel like constantly proving your worth, like clinging on to someone who kept slipping away. Love was effortless. It was late-night conversations that didn't feel exhausting. It was someone looking at you like you were enough just as you were. Ryan didn't fix me, but he reminded me that I was already whole. And that, for the first time, I was choosing someone not because I needed them, but because I wanted them. I never thought revenge would bring me peace. I thought it would be satisfying, yes, but I had expected to still feel some kind of emptiness afterward, like I would be left picking up the pieces of a shattered past. I was wrong. Because when I took my power back, when I walked away with everything they had tried to steal from me, I realized something. I had won. Not just in a petty I got my payback kind of way. I had won my life back. Daniel and Vanessa had destroyed themselves. I didn't need to do anything else. Didn't need to check on them, didn't need to see what was left of their lives. I already knew. Daniel's business never recovered from the scandal. The financial fraud investigation left him drained, his investors backed out, and the company he had built on my sacrifices crumbled beneath him. He went from a powerful businessman to a man barely holding on to what little he had left. Vanessa. He got what she deserved. She had married a man thinking he was her golden ticket to the life she always wanted. Instead, she got a disgraced, broke ex-EO whose only claim to fame was being the groom in one of the biggest wedding disasters of the decade. She tried to play the victim, of course. Cried about how she had been tricked, how she had no idea about the financial mess Daniel was in. But no one believed her. She wasn't innocent, she was just as guilty, and everyone knew it. Their marriage didn't last a year. When I heard about their divorce, I barely reacted. I wasn't happy about it, not in the way I once thought I would be. I just didn't care. As I had moved on. I wasn't the woman who cried over Daniel anymore. I wasn't the woman who lost sleep over what Vanessa had done. I had built something better. A life where I was happy, a life where I was free. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker in the distance, my phone buzzed with a message. Unknown number. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back 2 words. Me, wrong number. And then I blocked the number. Because Daniel's apologies meant nothing to me now. I put my phone down, exhaling softly as Ryan stepped onto the balcony, 2 glasses of wine in his hands. He handed me one, his gaze warm as he sat beside me. I didn't have to say anything. I didn't have to explain why I was smiling. Because Ryan wasn't my past. He was my future. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back.